Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to be talking about the admissions process and just kind of some of the factors that go into the admissions process. This video is going to be very general and will kind of scope out all schools. This isn't like specified towards a specific type of school. It really just goes for all schools and kind of just gives a general overview of what they're looking for in a sense, and really kind of what you should value when you're looking at your application and factors where you can improve and, kind of sway whoever is looking at your application. Okay, so the way that we're going to discuss all the factors of admission are by topic. So based on research, I've narrowed it down to about 6 topics, all of which have vary in importance, but this is kind of the overall general rank of how I would stack them and how universities and colleges seem to stack the importance of these factors. So the 6 factors we're going to talk about today are academics, standardized testing, teacher and counselor recommendations, the essay, extracurriculars, and leadership roles, and the last one is class rank. This is very generalized, so like going into this, don't be like, oh my god, this is the most important one. Like, no, don't worry at all. All of these are important in their own way, and they shine a light on certain aspects. Like, all of them don't show the same aspects repetitively. All of these different factors illustrate a different part of your life, which is what admissions is really trying to gauge how you are as an overall person, rather than just grades or a club you did. Okay, so the first one that we're going to talk about is the academics factor, which a lot of people say is the most important factor in theory because it really illustrates what you did mainly for those 4 years of high school and how you what you learned, how you grew from those experiences strictly through academics. Because I mean, you sit at school for 8 hours strictly doing academics. They want to see generally what you did during those 4 years academically. So the first thing they're going to look at is what coursework was offered to you at your high school. This is not what you've taken. It's like the school, your high school will give these colleges a course catalog of all the classes that are offered to you at your high school. And they'll see what courses did you take? What was the rigor of these courses? Did you challenge yourself at all during your time in high school? Like, let's say instead of regular physics, you took AP physics because you felt like you could handle it and that you did well. There's always those kids that take regular level courses because they know that they're going to be guaranteed a good grade in that class. Like, let's say someone's really good at math and they're like, oh, I'm taking regular, whatever, say algebra, because I want an easy 100. Admissions doesn't like to see that. They want to see, even though you may not perform as well in a higher level course, they do give you the benefit of the doubt that you are taking a harder course. They take that into account. They're not going to be like, oh, well, you got 100 in algebra 1 in ninth grade, but then algebra 2 in 10th grade, you went to a higher level course and you have maybe like an 80. They give you the benefit of the doubt because it is a harder class, and they see that because they see your course catalog and they see the levels of each course, which is illustrated on a transcript. Another thing I see a lot of kids worry about is that they didn't take those rigorous courses all throughout high school. And maybe their junior or maybe just even their senior year they started challenging themselves. But admissions doesn't mind. They want to see how you've grown progressively over time. They like to see that character development, that where you came to the realization that maybe you couldn't challenge yourself in the beginning, but then you progressively grew towards that and in the end began to challenge yourself. They still love to see that kind of stuff. Obviously, if you can't handle that kind of rigor and you feel like you're just gonna bomb it, you were never good in a certain subject in the first place, then don't challenge yourself. It's not worth a horrible grade or potentially failing just to say that you took a hard class. It's really all about personal preference with this, not what everyone else is doing. Another thing that they do look at are final grades and how you scored on your final because it really gauges what you took in from like the overall course. No, some people are not the best at standardized testing. I totally get it. I'm the same way. It's hard to like get caught up and be like, oh my God, I did so bad on the final. Like they're not gonna take me. This isn't the only factor, thankfully. They do look at those final grades, and that is very important when they're taking a look at your application. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next topic now, and the most hated topic, honestly, which is standardized testing. And this is specifically referring to the SAT and the ACT. I'm not talking about AP and IB exams. A lot of people really get upset if they do bad on those AP and IB exams because they feel like, oh my gosh, I failed, I got a 2, and now they're not gonna take me. Only reason, this is personal experience, the only reason that the colleges want your scores is to see what will transfer when you get to their school. So hypothetically, let's say you got 3s on all of them, looking to see what courses are going to transfer once you get there. I mean, for most of um the schools I applied to, I didn't submit any of my AP scores, like the official report, until I committed to a school. You don't have to send them all one when you're applying. You could self-report it, and then once you commit to a school, you can officially send the scores, and then they'll transfer whatever coursework they feel meets their standards. You could also look at it on their websites to see which specific AP is transferred to which classes, and you could get out of a lot of prerequisites, which is also really nice, but I'm sidetracking here. I'm talking about standardized testing. A lot of people and a lot of admissions people really emphasize, even though it is starting to get phased out, especially this school year, especially a lot of students last year couldn't take their exams and their SATs and ACTs because of the pandemic, obviously, and students who took AP exams faced a lot of difficulties, but they're trying to really like see how this could be changed. But for recent years, standardized testing has obviously always been a very important factor. Is annoying because not everyone is amazing at standardized testing, and a lot of people are always like, why do they want to see this? Like, I don't think it really measures my intelligence. Like, I did so well in school, I have so many activities and leadership roles and all these amazing things, except for my test scores. And really why they use these test scores is because it puts everyone on a level, on a equal playing field. Let's say a student from New York has 100 in biology, and let's say also a student in Arizona has 100 in biology, but the student from New York has a 30 on the ACT, but the student from Arizona only has a 25. It really illustrates how they compete on a level playing field, which I know is so annoying, but it just, it's their own system because not all school systems are the same. Not all high school systems are the same. Everyone grades differently. You don't know what factors are going into these students' grades. You don't know if the grades are extremely inflated or deflated. But I do think we are at a point in time where there might be a turn and this might start to become phased out. Another reason that they do use standardized tests to kind of measure intelligence, for a lack of a better word, is to see how you can handle the rigor at the school you're applying to, how you can act under pressure, because these tests are very pressure heavy and it's easy to crack. And they want to see, can you handle that pressure if we do put that pressure on you? This factor, standardized testing factor, and the academics factor, I think most colleges would say are the most important ones, and they really look at these two factors first before they look at everything else, just to see if you are at the benchmark where they want most of their students to be. Okay, so the next factor we're going to be talking about, which I don't think is really talked about a lot when you hear people talking about college admissions, is teacher recommendations. So for most colleges, they recommend that it should be a core teacher in a major subject. So the major subjects are English, math, social studies, science, and also language, because they feel like these are big major courses and that these teachers should really know you well. And obviously, if you wanted to do another teacher, like an elective teacher, that's fine, but they should be added on as extras. So they usually recommend that you need about 2 recommendations from any of the core subject teachers. And then if you want to add elective teachers, so like let's say you took photography in high school and you got along with that teacher so well and you have such a good connection, they can also write a letter, but it's going to be considered an extra letter on top of those core teacher letters. Also, your school counselor is responsible for writing a letter for you, and they really just talk about your overall personality, things that are important to you, and how really other people perceive you. This is really the point of outside recommendations from teachers, because they really want to see how you were in a classroom and kind of an opinion from someone else's point of view. Students usually don't really have control over what the teachers will write about them, but usually what teachers will do is they'll give you a sheet with a bunch of questions, usually around like 4 or 5 questions, asking you what they really want, asking about what you want them to highlight about you. So some of the example questions would be like, what was a time you challenged yourself in this class? What are some qualities you want me to highlight about you? When was a time that you really pushed yourself? How did you work with others in the class? To really kind of give an overall sense of how you were in that class. And sometimes a lot of students will choose maybe a core class that they did not do well in, and it really gives an alternate view to those students who maybe on paper didn't do so well, but then you get that recommendation from the teacher that's like, oh, well, they did do very bad. However, I do feel like they tried very hard and they were very engaged in my class. It really offers an alternate opinion to maybe something that might look bad on paper. Like I said earlier, you really have no control over what your teachers will say about you besides maybe that questionnaire sheet that they may give you. But there also are strict rules called the FERPA agreement where you are not allowed to preview any recommendation letters. On the Common App, there's going to be a section where it says FERPA agreement, and you basically say, I waive my right to view any of the letters. And it's pretty common standard for people to just waive their rights, because if you don't, it kind of looks suspicious to admissions that you're not waiving your right, and they're basically thinking, oh, like, why are you worried about what other people say about you? Are you worried that something negative was said about you? So most people, or 100% of people, waive their right. It's really not something you should be that concerned about if you do trust these teachers. I mean, you chose these specific teachers to write your letters, so I think you should confide in them to say positive things about you. And honestly, I don't think any teacher is going out of their way to write something horrible and negative about you. It's their job to really just say positive things about you and how you contributed to their class overall. Like I said earlier, it's really supposed to highlight traits that don't really show in your grades or activities that you did. It's all written on paper. It's just like, I did this. But they really want to see how you are from someone else's point of view, not personally, which is really reflected more in the essay. Ties into our next factor, which is the essay. So this really gives you an opportunity to really just talk from your point of view now about yourself on a more raw personal level, about any experiences that you have had, how you grew from them, really growth in a sense, and from the experiences that you had. So when most people talk about what they wrote for their essay, it's really how you grew from something, learned something, came to a realization about yourself, or how you grew from a certain experience, even if it is like a very quirky kind of topic, which not everyone talks about. But it really depends on your personal, first of all, writing level, what you feel comfortable sharing. It's a bunch of different factors that really go into your essay and how you really want to embody yourself and show how you are towards other people. So there are seven, they're all pretty open-ended questions on the Common App, but one of the essay topics is really just write about whatever you want, which really is nice because you're not restricted to these questions that maybe you don't feel like you could answer to the best of your ability. It really gives you the chance to open up about what you are passionate about. Like one time, there was a college admissions advisor, and she was talking about this girl who wrote her essay about how much she loved grilled cheese, which is like not something you really think about when you're writing an essay. It's just something different that doesn't show on your applications. You don't need to talk about how the time you did well on a math test. Like they see that on paper. Also, a thing to avoid, a lot of people do this, is they just talk about like kind of a sob story where they talk about this time that they were in a hard place. Like, I'm gonna think of an example. Someone was like, "Oh, I broke my arm and I couldn't play baseball." And then they just kind of talk about how they struggled through that, and they don't mind seeing a sob story. They just want to see how you overcame that. It's just easier to overall avoid those kinds of topics because sometimes people subconsciously just write a sob story and then don't really talk about how they overcame it. And these stories kind of become insignificant because these advisors are seeing that kind of story so many times to the point where it's repetitive and really not personable anymore. It's kind of just a whatever kind of topic. So it's really important to sit down, brainstorm, and put a lot of effort towards the essay because it really shows you on a personal level and that relationship that you have, whatever experience you're going to write about, and how really you learn from that and really illustrates your characteristics on a more, like I said before, raw and personal level. That's like the keywords: personal, raw, how you grew and overcame. Those are all keywords when you're thinking about an essay. Another factor of the essays is supplemental essays. So these are the schools pick these topics and they give it to you. So they'll ask their own questions. This isn't, not all schools require a supplemental essay or they don't offer a supplemental essay, but most of the time the supplemental essays are more geared towards the school. So like an example question would be, why do you want to come here? Why do you want to come to this school? Another topic might be reflect on an activity you did in high school and what you learned from it, how you grew from it. So, but most of the time it's really about the school. It's like, what will you accomplish at our school? It's those types of questions. They want to see that you're making your stay at during your 4 years at college worthwhile and you're not just sitting taking classes every day. They want to see you going out, making a difference, which I know is like every school says that, but they really do want to see that. And through the supplemental essays, you could really show how passionate you are about a school if you really are like set somewhere. Usually these essays are kind of shorter than the formal essay. It's usually maybe a paragraph or two. It really depends on the school and their requirements. Some schools might be like, oh, only 250 words, while another school might be up to 1,000 words. It really depends on where you're applying, to be honest. Okay, so the next factor we're going to talk about are extracurriculars and leadership roles. This is another opportunity to show what your grades don't show. It really, a lot of people focus really heavy on this to show other aspects of their life and their interests and what you do in your casual time. And most schools say this, but they really care about the quality of your extracurriculars over the quantity. And what do I mean by that? What schools don't want to see that you did 6 clubs, but you only did those 6 clubs for a year. They'd rather see 3 clubs that you did for all 4 years of high school. Because then, like the first example I used, the 6 clubs, but you only did them for a year, it just looks like you're rushing around to get activities just so schools will be like, oh, they did a lot of activities, so we'll let them in. It's not how it works. They're not asking you to cure cancer and make 700 new projects. They want to see that you're committed to one or a few things and that you truly care about those things rather than just jumping around to different things. You're not that passionate about it. And it's obviously fine if you go to something and you do it for a year and you're like, I'm not crazy about this. That's obviously different. But if you're just like, I'm going to join 4 clubs my senior year to just write all my applications, they don't care about that. They don't really care. They want to see that you're committed and that you have a passion for what you're joining and what you're putting your time towards. Also want to see what have you achieved during these activities. You were here for 4 years doing these activities. What did you accomplish during that time? Because you had 4 years to accomplish things. So let's say you ran track in high school and maybe you made states or academy meet, stuff like that. Shows personal growth in that activity, which they like to see as well. But it's not the deciding factor for these schools. They want to just see another side of yourself, that your grades and your essay, that everything else does not show. Also, another important thing personally, I think, is to really highlight what you did if you had a leadership role. It really gives you a time to hype yourself up kind of and say and be proud of what you did and talk about the responsibilities that you had while you had this leadership role, because a lot when you have leadership roles, it really gives you a lot of good traits for later in life, especially with careers, and it shows that you can lead a group of people, you get along with other people, and see that authority trusts you to have that role because they feel you are qualified and responsible enough to have that role. So it's really a time to write about what did you do when you had those leadership roles? What were you in charge of? What did you accomplish even if you had those leadership roles? Which I think is really important as well. And I think that people should really take advantage of because it offers another side of you. Okay, so the next one that we're going to discuss is class rank, and I'm not talking about your physical rank, like let's say you're number 200 out of 400. I'm not talking about that. This is how you stack up compared to your other students in your grade or class applying to the same schools. So I know that sounds confusing, but basically, when you apply to a school, you're not competing with all the people that applied to that school. You're competing with the kids in your school that are also applying to that school. And how do you stack up compared to them? Because they had the same opportunities as you and they want to see who took who took advantage of those opportunities, who really made it worthwhile their 4 years, who didn't do anything, and who kind of just slacked off. They want to see what everyone in your school was doing, and that's how they really accept and deny people. And who has the best overall qualities is really what they're seeing. It's easy to get caught up in what other people are doing, but you just need to remember that maybe someone's really strong academically and they have amazing test scores, but maybe you don't. But maybe that other person has done no extracurriculars. It's really easy to get caught up in that kind of stuff, but you really have to take a step back and look from a bird's eye view about how you are compared to these other people and where you are stronger, because definitely people are stronger in other places that you are not, and vice versa. Okay, now that we talked about the main factors are the most important, let's talk about some other factors that go into admissions processes but aren't the most important. So the first one is showing interest. A lot of people worry about this, especially people who are going to more prestigious universities, showing interest. A lot of people get worked up about that. So basically, showing interest means that you show that you are passionate in this school. Maybe a college rep comes to your school for an information session. They want to see, did you go to that information session? Did you take advantage of when our school is visiting you? Example could be, did you go on a tour at our school? How many times did you tour? That kind of stuff, like the really nitty gritty kind of stuff they look at sometimes. It's not always the case, and it's not worth your time to be like, oh my gosh, I have to visit 12 million times and that whole thing. Because at the end of the day, it's not the most important factor. They're not going to be like, I'm not taking you because you didn't visit our school. It's really not that big of a deal. I'm just saying it might, it just goes into consideration a tad. The second one is an admissions interview. Only some schools, usually more Ivy League schools, require an interview, but some other schools you could book it. It kind of ties into showing interest, but also it could be considered on its own, where you really sit down and talk with someone from that school and again, see you on a more personal level, because a lot of people get worked up about how academics and standardized testing and how they're not strong in those fields, but they're very charitable and they're outgoing, and really the interview is a good time to show those traits and to really hype yourself up again. So usually in admissions interviews, it's usually one or two people, and it's more conversational than it is um like back and forth questions. They want it to be more conversational and to see how you act. And I did a admissions interview once, and it was with a student actually, or like a student that was also an admissions rep kind of situation. And she really just asked very more personal questions, not like kind of about high school and how I felt towards certain activities and about my town. Just another opportunity to really just show yourself how you are on a more personal level, which they do like to see. They like to see how you are characteristically, which I know I keep saying a million times, but I do think it's a really important factor to consider. The next factor is a good match. So a lot of people get denied from schools that they apply to that they know that they could have gotten into, and they always are like, why didn't I get in? Oh my gosh, I thought I had it all right, like the grades were there, all that. But sometimes schools will take a look at your application and be like, this is not fitting who we want our student body to represent, and for that reason they won't take you, which I know is like really stressful, but sometimes it just maybe wasn't worth it. It's better to go somewhere where you were meant to be than someone that just took you because you had all the data that matched everybody else and you are not happy. So sometimes schools will turn you away from that. Will turn away from you for that reason. And the last one is a passion or interest in your projected field. So let's say I wanted to study business. In high school, did I take any business classes? Did I do any clubs that were business related? That's another thing to consider, especially when you're looking at other students and seeing, did they do that as well? And maybe a lot of them did and you didn't. So that's another reason or another factor to look at. I know it's hard to like worry about all of these things, but in retrospect, these are not the most important factors. Please remember that, and please don't stress about these factors. You really have little to no control over most things, to be completely honest, especially when they are looking over applications and stuff. It's not like they're going to come back to you on your denial letter and be like, we're not accepting you because XYZ. They're just gonna say we're not taking you, and then it's up to you to just kind of wonder why. And it's really not worth your time to think about that all the time, because at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, and lastly, some things to remember. Like I said earlier, it's easy to get caught up in only one factor. Don't let it. There are so many factors and so many aspects about you that you could really show to these admissions people, can really give an overall sense about you. Don't really get worked up about maybe you have a really bad SAT score. Don't let it work you up. Work on strengthening other factors so that seems insignificant. Also, a lot of people, especially with people who have this dream school, don't bombard admissions with a ton of emails. Obviously, understand if it's like questions about certain things, like maybe you didn't understand a question on their application, but don't just keep emailing them being like, hi, I'm so interested. Please take me. Thank you. They don't like that, honestly. It really doesn't make a difference if you're bombarding these people. They're not gonna, just because you have a relationship with reps or people from admissions doesn't mean they're going to take you. It's like the college admission scandal, but you didn't pay any money. You're just bombarding these admissions officers, and at the end of the day, it's really their decision if they want to give in to that, but I don't really think it's worth your time. Next thing, don't compare yourself to others in only one area. So let's say you and your friend Joe took the ACT together, but Joe got a perfect score and you got like a 20. Don't let that like work you up just because you and Joe have significantly different scores and you're applying to the same schools. Maybe Joe doesn't do a lot of clubs. Maybe you do so many clubs and you have done them for so many years and you have leadership roles in a lot of these clubs. Don't work yourself up about only one aspect of yourself that maybe someone else may have. Next one, be personable in aspects where you can. This really helps. It really shows how you are just as a true person, not on paper. I talked about that a lot earlier though. You have so many opportunities to do this in the teacher recommendations, in the essay, in interviews, when you're talking to reps if they come to your school. All of those are opportunities when you can really hype yourself up, show how you are just as a person. Next one, just because you have one bad aspect does not mean you will be denied. Sometimes some people don't have the right GPA for their school. Maybe they are a little under what their research may say. Don't be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get denied if I don't get my grades up. Obviously, if your like grades are horrible and you're applying to like Ivy League school, you probably will be denied. But if it's not that big of a difference, don't work yourself up about it. I know there tends to be a lot of anxiety when it comes to applying to college, especially when you're competing with other people. And it's really just good to just worry about yourself. It's not worth worrying about all these other people and where they're applying and what grades they got. It really just is really stressful when you do it like that. And it doesn't work out for anybody. And you're just putting so much stress on yourself when you could have been working towards bettering yourself. And last one, and honestly the most important one, everything will work out in the end. You will get accepted somewhere and you will go to a school that will make you happy. I know it's stressful when you're going through it, but afterwards, looking back, it's like I stress myself out for what? Happy wherever you go. I guarantee that. People know themselves and they know what makes them happy. And in the end, you're going to see whatever makes you happy. And honestly, if it doesn't work out at the end of the day, you can always transfer. Thank God if there is that option, to be honest. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you have a more personal question, you could email me. I have a website linked as well with information about all of this kinds of stuff. Yeah, thank you guys so much.